Billy Osborn, Ozzy's observations, former Pitt Panther radio analyst, scout, player with the Philadelphia Eagles. And he joins us here on the Boardwalk Honda Hotline as we take a look at some of the key things, Billy, that happened yesterday. And, I mean, there's so many things in this game that you can point at. But I want to ask you, as a guy who played at such a high level, where momentum factors into a game.
Yeah, Mike, that's the $100,000 question everybody's asking, because it was so evident, and you see it a lot in college, how the momentum swings can really impact the game. Kids are young. Place is crazy, they're playing a sold-out stadium. They're not used to it. You don't see it where it really impacts, the NFL players. But in the playoffs, it definitely is there. And it was there in full flight and full view in yesterday's afternoon. And let me tell you something, it matters a lot. And I think anybody that saw yesterday's ball game can attest to that.
So when did you think the momentum shifted from Philly to New Orleans?
Well, I think there was little pockets of it starting to shift. I mean, I think if you saw Breeze early on, he was just out of rhythm. You could see in his eyes on the sideline. You could see where he fumbled the snap. It seemed like the moment was getting really, really to him. And I think that when they missed that touchdown chance to Ertz on the long pass that was underthrown, I think there was a little shift, because they kind of took a breath, because they were like, oh, my gosh, we cannot stop this onslaught. They are definitely a different team. They're coming out. That was a little bit of the kink. Then when they went for it on fourth down, the Eagles were ready for it. They went punt safe. But then you could see it started to shift there, because then they capitalized on that, and they got that fourth down play, and they went down and they got points. So that's where it also started. But, Mike, I think the real momentum shift happened right before halftime. And if you recall, the Eagles got the ball back with about 2 and change, 3 and change. They got a first down on the first down play to Aguilar on the little out route. He made a real nice catch, and it was first down. Then, for whatever reason, on that next play, the Eagles go shotgun, no motion, no shift, no play action, nothing, just all stop routes, and they missed Ertz. Ertz tried for a diving catch, if you remember that, okay?
Yep.
Then on the second down play,
right by the sideline in front of the sticks.
Exactly. Okay, so now it's 2nd and 10 with about a minute 50 to go. All right, and then we ran that underneath handoff with no motion, no shifting, no play action, nothing. Just that underneath handoff, zone blocking up front, get 1 yard. So now it's 3rd and 9. We missed the third down play, and we punt the ball away, and the Saints get the ball back, and they go down and they kick a field goal before halftime. To me, that's where it started. And then you think, okay, because if you see some of the Patriots and what they do, and a lot of other teams, they go 2 for 1. They score right before the halftime, and then they get the ball back and they score again to start the second half and put the game away.
Yeah, Burkhardt brought that up. The broadcast team brought that up, that the Eagles trying to go for the 2 for 1.
There you go. And right there would have been a perfect. And then I thought, okay, well, we missed a great opportunity, but we get the ball back to start the second half. The Eagles' adjustments at halftime amounted to a no run, a no gain on first down, a blown second down play where you got to burn a timeout, nothing on third down, and you got to punt the football away. So those were your 6 plays, 3 plays before the half, 3 plays after the half, and then what happens? The Saints come out and they go on an 11-minute, 18-play drive that convert 2 third and longs, 1 2nd and 20, 2 fourth downs, and get a touchdown. And to me, that's where the momentum was going.
Yeah, there's so much there. The interception Foles throws down the sideline. They're up 14-0. He goes to Ertz. They're in field goal range. I mean, that's just a bad throw. If you don't make the throw, you got to make sure that nobody else can get that ball but Ertz.
Yep, you got to throw that ball outside. Ertz had him by 2 steps. I mean, obviously, it was a great individual effort to get the interception. It looked like Ertz tried to go up and knock that down. He just got the ball taken away from him. But you're right. When that throw is made, that ball's got to be thrown. And if it's not thrown far enough, at least it's thrown to the outside so that the DB can't go over there and make the interception. So he underthrew it and he put it in the wrong spot.
Yeah, you got that. What about the punt? You mentioned that they knew it was coming. So, if they know it's coming, I knew it was coming. I said they're faking this thing right here. I can see this. It felt like something was different. It just felt different. So the question has been, should they have accepted the penalty, which I don't know that I've ever seen. I don't know how many teams say you're down in your own – they're on like their own 30-yard line. How many teams – give you the ball back and give you another down to try to get a first down? So I don't think I fault him for not taking the penalty. Where do you stand there?
Yeah, I'm the same way. It's easy in hindsight to say, my first thought was, okay, good, we're going to push them back a little bit further. Now it's going to be 3rd and 11. And up to that point, there was nothing that the offense was doing for the Saints. I mean, I don't even think they got a first down yet at that point. So I could see where some people would say, let's push them back and let's make them go 3rd and 12 from the 18-yard line or 19-yard line. However, Breeze is a veteran quarterback. I can see both sides of the point, but I don't think that's a wrong thing for making them punt the football because, again, the Eagles went out and punt safe. I mean, if you remember, Cox was on the field on that play. Brandon Graham was on the field. They had their starting unit, and they only had one guy back in punt, but everybody else was up and punt safe. If you look at the replay, it's just that they were colliding on the center. They missed the right side, and they actually stopped him from running. He just made a second effort, and they pushed the pile forward. But that was a critical play right there. But that is one of those ones. Should you have accepted the penalty? Yes, there is a train of thought, but to me personally, I don't think I have a problem with that. Because I thought they were going to punt the football.
Billy Osborne here on the Boardwalk on the Hotline. His observations from yesterday's game. All right, there's a lot of complaints about Schwartz and the way he calls defense. If Billy, I told you on Friday they're going to go down to New Orleans and give up 20, how do I have any complaints about the coordinator and the defense today?
Well, that's a good point because everybody thought that. My thought was. I picked the Eagles 28-24, and I thought if they could keep them right in that range, they had a shot. And if you can just get into the second half or the fourth quarter with a chance to win the ball game on the road as an 8-point underdog, you and I both would have said we'll take it, right? We would have said, yep, that's fine. And Schwartz basically was doing it with smoke and mirrors in that secondary. My only issue, Mike, and I can see what people are saying.
I'm by the way, I'm not saying he's 100% absolved of wrongdoing. I think he made some mistakes, but I can't put him at the top of the. People want the guy fired. They think he's awful.
I'm with you. I'm with you 100%. I don't think the guy. Matter of fact, I think in a lot of ways he should be thanked because he kept that game. He kept the Eagles in that game when the Eagles were being very conservative offensively and weren't converting first downs and weren't being on the field. I mean, we got crushed on first down. We got away with it in Chicago. We just didn't get away with it last night. We got away with a lot of second and third and longs in Chicago. And that's because the Bears didn't have the type of offense that the Saints do. We just didn't get a chance yesterday. But Schwartz, I guess, I thought, Mike, a couple times that when you're in third and long, blitz the quarterback because the hot adjustments are usually 5 and 6 yards, slants, outs, stop routes. And if you do that, they catch the ball, you come up and you tackle, and you make them kick the football. And I also thought that Breeze showed the first game that if you give him time, he's going to step up and he's going to find the right guy. So I think that, that was my only thought was that why don't you bring pressure? Like if you bring one extra, like bring 5 instead of 4. If you bring 5, is that really going to expose your secondary? Is that really going to put you in such a bind that you're worried about the long completion? And then I kept thinking they kept giving that in route, that long dig in route. Somebody's got to cover the middle of the field. That's my issues with Schwartz last night.
Well, he did the first time they played, he blitzed and he got torched down there for 48. They brought pressure a handful of times, and Breeze didn't even blink. He got the ball out of his hand so fast. So he was like, damned if I do, damned if I don't. He was in a tough situation. Yeah, and then he loses Douglas. He's got to bring Hankins in, who I've never even heard of before. I don't even know if I'm giving him the right credit for his name. And then Douglas comes back, and then Maddox goes out, and they got to bring Hankins back in. Hawkins back in the game, and they went after him again. So he was playing with half a deck to go into the game, and then the deck got stripped of some more cards. I thought he kind of had an uphill. To give up 20 with that secondary, he should have a statue outside.
I agree. Yeah, and and also they had Brandon Graham came out for a while.
Cox.
They lost Cox for a lot of plays. I mean, they were playing with a lot of guys that were injured, and I think he thought to himself, you know what? I am going to just make him methodically take the offense down the field. I'm not going to give him an easy touchdown because that's what happened, you're right, the last time. So I'm going to see if we can get a sack, if we can do something. And if you remember, if they get that strip sack and they get the ball there where they're in field goal range again, they would have had, that's the other chance that they had to score that 21st point when the ball went right through Brandon Graham's hand. So, Schwartz, you could say, but, it's almost like pick your poison. If you put too many guys in the box, Breeze picks you apart. If you stick back, they're going to run the ball. So he was just trying to give his team a chance to maybe somebody get a deflection or whatever. And at the end, there was a chance for the Eagles still to win the game.
Well, and guess what? I get it. It's demoralizing. It's a long drive, and it maybe burned the Eagles, defense down in the end, Billy. But you fought with the Saints and made them go, 14 minutes to try to just get 7 points on the board. I mean, that probably took a lot out of them, too.
There's no doubt. And let's keep in mind, I believe, what was it, like 6 out of the last 7 or 7 out of the last 8? The Eagles were on the road. So they played a lot of road games in a row, not to mention on the way to Bears, the playoffs. So they were definitely gassed. You could see it started to wear, and then Breeze got his feet underneath them. That offense started clicking, and then everybody was just holding on for dear life there at the end.
Billy, I opened up this show today by saying it's all right to say I like Nick Foles, but he did not play very well. In the end, I think the Eagles lost the game because, quite frankly, the quarterback didn't play very well. There were plays to be made that are still sitting on that field.
Yes, there was. I mean, there's no doubt. I mean, he made some great plays. The touchdown, the first touchdown he threw to Matthews, Goddard missed a block on the outside, and Foles stayed in there and got absolutely leveled when he threw that ball and dropped it in. When they dropped that dime in there and he got hit. Made a couple other great plays, but let's face it, he underthrew Ertz. That would have been a touchdown. He underthrew Tate, who was wide open on that little post
and that was probably that was probably a face guarding.
Yep, probably a face guarding. I don't know what happened on the one that he hit Nelson, because Nelson, there was a blitz coming and it looked like he ran that skinny post and he hit him right on dead stride. If Aguilar looks up for that football, he might still be running because he put it right in the seams. I don't know if that was Foles or that was Aguilar, but again, there was some miscommunication there. But I don't know about you, Mike, but when he missed the field goal at the end, I got to admit, I thought
everybody,
this is exactly what we looked for. We're going to win the game. Now it's just a matter of, what I was thinking? Honestly, this is exactly my thoughts. Don't score with enough time. Let Breeze come down and kick a field goal. I actually already had 7 points penciled in for us. That's how much I guess we're so used to Foles doing what he does at the end of the game.
I think everybody, first off, the chain of events, Billy, it's third down, and the announcer says, well, they're going to need something here, a sack or some kind of loss to get them to push them back. They hand the ball off right up the middle. I mean, how many times do you see a play up the middle get blasted back for 5 yards, and you're thinking, are you kidding me? They just lost 5 yards on this play to push it from a 45-yarder to a 52-yard field goal, and that changed the whole field goal complexion. He missed it. At that point, I think everybody watching was like, they're going to win this game again. Are you kidding me that this just set up like that, and then boom, it just wasn't meant to be. Now, you mentioned the time. Why did they go for it? Why did they run a play before the 2-minute warning?
Agreed. There's my issues, and I love Doug. I think he's a tremendous coach. He's a great play caller. I feel that he's sometimes better when he's behind than he is when he's ahead, because I just think we got too conservative, and I don't understand our run game philosophy. You look at some of these other teams, look at the Patriots and how they're running ghost motion, and that one touchdown they had, they faked the underneath handoff, and like 3 guys got held on the backside, and they were able to run in basically untouched from 8-9 yards out. Those are my issues. But the other issue I have there is, you're worrying about not giving the ball back with too much time. You had plenty of time. You had 2 timeouts. You're in the red zone. Why? And I'm not saying they rushed it, but in that critical part of a point is, why don't you just let the ball go down to 2 minutes? take your time out, come out, adjust, give everybody a breather, and let everybody reset. That's the $1,000 question, and I agree. I think personally, everybody thought that should be a 2-minute timeout and let the guys go, let them rest, and call another play. I think Doug, in my opinion, that was a mistake by the head coach.
Right. I mean, is he trying to say the Saints aren't going to be set up and ready, so we're going to try to sneak a play in here? Is that the thought process?
Well, I heard him in the postgame say that he wanted to stay aggressive. Like his thought was, we want to stay aggressive, and I get that. However, there wasn't really any matchup problems. I mean, it wasn't like they went to the hurry up. So they still huddled and they still called. So it wasn't like they were worried about substitution. So in that case, you still want you're actually, the clock is your enemy. You want the clock to run down. So to snap the ball with 2:01 on the clock, to me, what difference does it make? Just let it go down to 2, reset, and talk. And obviously, hindsight is 20/20. The big deal is that he should have caught the football. However, looking back on it, I think I don't necessarily blame him for declining the penalty on the personal foul and giving Drew Brees, give the Saints a 4th down play versus 3rd and long. But in that one, I think you call the timeout.
Brandon,
I'm sorry, I think you let it go down to the 2-minute and go and get the timeout with the 2-minute warning.
Billy Osborne's on with us. The Brandon Brooks, when he went out, the offense took a change. It seems that, just his continuity with Lane Johnson, it's loud, the silent count stuff, and just what he brings to the table was really undervalued when we saw him go out.
I agree. My first thing that I put in my Twitter feed yesterday was that, one of my first keys was the game was going to be won up front. And we saw what Brendan Cox and Fletcher Cox, what he did to that game. And to some of the other guys in the D-line, I mean, those big boys up front really got it done, really stopped them on the run. And so did the Saints. Those guys up front played a whale of a game. But that offensive line for the Eagles really had catapulted them in their winning streaks at the end of the game. And against the Bears, they were, I think, probably the main key and why the Eagles won that football game. And when he went out, you could just see everybody got deflated. It seemed like then our what we had with the running game, that ended up being completely non-existent. And then Foles was, unfortunately, under pressure. And I don't know if it impacted the play calling, but it sure looked like it changed the play calling because a lot of things happened differently before than it did after. And it could probably be put just because of him coming out of the ballgame. He's that vital. And you're right. I do believe we undervalued him.
Yep, I think, that was another moment in the game, and then a lot of people talking about Brandon Graham not falling. I said, come on, how many times do you see these defensive linemen fall right on top of the ball and it just stays under them? I can't really fault them for that because they ended up punting there anyway.
Yeah, that was obviously if they get the ball there and they're, we're basically in field goal range. So I understand what people are saying about that. I mean, yes, that would have been nice to get the ball back. And with the way the Saints were playing, we may have had the knockout punch right there. You go up to, it's bad enough that they got came back from 2 scores, but 3 scores would have been really, really difficult. That being said, you really can't blame him there. That's not it. But I think that him going out in the injury and to your point right before that with Foles just for whatever reason, I don't know if it was the play calling, the lack of the running game. Again, the Saints are a very good defense. Whatever it was, there was a stretch there in that 2nd and 3rd quarter that Foles just was not himself. In the beginning of the 4th, he was just not himself.
Billy Osborne, you were a scout with the Kansas City Chiefs, so I want to get your opinion on a couple of off-season things here. Nick Foles, what do you do there if you're Philadelphia?
Well, it's so crazy to think. I was one for not trading him early in the season. I said that, with his everybody was talking about let's trade him before the season started, and I was like, no, not with Wentz coming back from a major knee surgery, not with what he did, and not with unless you really get something that blows you away. And you got 2 choices: do you trade him away and get him in the right spot and see what you can get for him, or do you franchise him and then you get, you definitely are going to get your, a better trade pick and compensation from that. But the only thing is it costs you a ton of money to franchise him. My initial thought is that Wentz is never really going to feel comfortable, I don't believe, I don't care how good of friends they are, until he's not looking over his shoulder. And I think as long as Foles there's always going to be that, that a little bit of thoughts about, is it really his team and how's he feeling as far as being sole, propriety of the quarterback position. That said, he still is a guy that's got injured. And, if I think that if I was them, I think I would franchise Foles and let's see what the trade for, how it goes out. And then you can dictate where he goes and what you get for him. Mm-hmm. That's my thoughts. I don't know. What are the options that you've heard, Mike?
Well, he has a mutual option in his contract to which the Eagles have the first opportunity to, pick up the option. He has to mutually agree it for $20 million. Now, there's been talk that the Eagles could pick up the option and then he would buy his way out of it for $2 million and then he would become a free agent. So the Eagles don't want to just risk the chance to lose him, which would mean the franchise tag comes into play. But you can't pay him $25 million
as a backup and take that hit to the, the only thing I can think of is if you franchise him, you're just doing that because you're looking for the right opportunity to move him, because then you have control. And I believe if you franchise him, you also get a higher compensatory pick. Mm-hmm. And in other words, you get something for him. If he just goes as a free agent, then I believe it's a lot less. So I think that the reason that they would franchise him would be for that reason, to make sure that they get him. And then, of course, once they trade him, they don't lose that. Then they don't get that hit to the
Now, let me ask you this. Let me ask you this. As a guy, you scout it, you know what goes on in those conversations. If someone called the Eagles and said, Howie, we want Carson, we'll give you 3 first-round picks. At that point, do the Eagles change course?
Well, 3 first-round picks, I think that you really got to listen. I mean, I'm
and by the way, though, Billy, Schefter mentioned on his podcast that he thinks the conversation would start with 3 first-round picks. Not that's the end of it. He thinks that's where the conversation begins.
Wow. I don't even think that's ever been done in the National Football League before. So, at that point, I think you might have to listen, because you do have a quarterback who you can win with. He's only 4 years older than Carson Wentz. Is that unbelievable? And He's 10 years younger than Drew Brees. So that means, hypothetically, you have 10 years left of a quarterback that has proven that he can win. He's proven that he can rise to big levels in the National Football League. He's 6'6". He's obviously can win football games, and there's a little bit of magic, and he can, he's a leader. But Carson Wentz is a once-in-a-generation type of a quarterback. The only concern I have for Carson is his ability to truly come back from that type of an injury and be the same type of player that he was before. Now, keep in mind, he came back for 3 or 4 weeks, and he was the best quarterback in the National Football League. I mean, I don't know if we forget that, but just to remind everybody, when he came back from his injury, there was a 2 or 3 week stretch when he was playing at such a high level. I think his quarterback rating was like 136. Another one was 120. Another one was 140. So he was playing off the charts. So obviously he can play at a high level. Mike, to answer your question, if you're going to start at 3 first-round picks, I think you have to listen to that. I would not look to move Carson Wentz. But if somebody's going to give up 3 first-round draft picks and you have Nick Foles still on your squad and you still have Nick Sudfeld, who they seem to like, I think you got to listen, don't you? 3 first-round draft picks?
It's a hard one to say no to. And Schefter mentioned, he said teams said that he said GMs had commented to him if the Eagles were willing to give up Wentz, that they would trade half their rosters to get him.
Well, I think that just goes to show you how great a talent that Wentz is and what everybody thinks about him. And let's face it, we've seen it. He's a magical guy, and I think that if everybody can learn from their play calling, what you did under Nick Foles, and keep in mind, he's only 4 years older, as I said, than Carson. And I can't believe the value that people are putting on Foles, considering he won the Super Bowl, was a Super Bowl MVP, and just did what he did at the end of that season. I mean, if you want to start quarterbacks and you look out there, okay, maybe you can start picking 4 or 5 other quarterbacks in the National Football League that play better at the end of the season. But Nick Foles has got to be in the talking for the top 6 that played as good as any other quarterback in the National Football League at the end of the season through the playoffs. And he's going to basically go walk away for a 2nd or a 3rd round draft pick. It's kind of crazy when you think about it, but I guess that's the reality.
Billy Osborne, real quick. I got about a minute left. Brandon Graham, you bringing him back?
I'm sorry, Mike. You went out. What'd you say, bud?
Brandon Graham, are you bringing him back?
I would love to bring Brandon Graham back. I don't know what that cap hit would be, but I think he's he's also one of those guys in that defense that that's kind of anchors him down. I would love to bring him back. Yes.
Last guy, Sproles.
Sproles, he's a special talent too. To me, it looked like he's still got a lot of gas in his tank, and if you can get the right price for him, I think he's a special. I mean, he's a matchup nightmare. He's won some of those games. I think that he hasn't lost a step after he came back from that injury. I love him. And to see what he did in there against that pass rush, he stoned some of those big guys coming in on that blitz and stood right in there. I love him. I would bring him back. He's one of those guys that you can really, do some serious matchup. Plus, he's a guy in the return game that is a veteran. So, yes, I bring him back too.
All right, we got so much more for this offseason. We'll bring Billy back in as the offseason gets here. The draft, I remember last year we had a lot of fun doing that draft special. We'll have that up for us again. Billy Osborne here on the Boardwalk Honda Hotline. Inside the Birds podcast, Defend Your Head. By the way, Maddox and Douglas, that's a nice Pitt WV tandem for maybe years to come because Darby is also a free agent next year.
Is that unbelievable? Those two young guys, who would have thought that those two guys, because of the injuries, would be pressed into play? And yes, they had the little bumps in the road, and you and I talked about it, but overall, I'm telling you right now, the Eagles are very lucky to have those two guys there from the backyard brawl days playing on the same field. And it goes to show you, when you have good guys in the secondary, think about Alshon, when he dropped that ball. If you remember, the play before that, he got blasted in that secondary when he caught that ball. I mean, he got lit up on his catch before that, and that does make a difference. And when you got guys like Rasul Douglas, who brings the wood when he comes in tackles, and you got a guy like with all those other guys back there and the linebackers, and you get a young guy back there, number 29 for the Eagles in the secondary. I think with those two guys back there, they're going to have a lot of good days in that Eagles secondary for a long time.
Inside the Birds and Defend Your Head, ProTech helmets. Check them out at Ozzy_football on Twitter. All right, Oz, we'll talk more football in the offseason, pal.
Sounds good, buddy. Take care.